Welcome to a walk that takes us over one of York's most vital crossings, Lendal Bridge. We are starting on the western side, near Station Road, and heading east toward Museum Street and the heart of the city. Bridge at night crossing the River Ouse. Take a moment to appreciate where we are. We are crossing the River Ouse, the very river that defines the geography and the history of York. This river has been the city's lifeblood for 2 millennia, serving as a highway for Roman legions, Viking longships, and medieval trade barges. The Lendal Bridge we are standing on today is a magnificent Victorian iron structure, completed in 1863. Look at the elegant ironwork and the sturdy construction. This bridge replaced earlier, temporary crossings and ferries, reflecting the need for a modern, reliable link between the newly built York railway station and the city centre. It was a crucial piece of infrastructure for the burgeoning Victorian city. Now, pause and look up and down the river. To the north, you might glimpse the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey and the Museum Gardens, where the city walls meet the river, a beautiful view that contrasts nature with ancient stone. Classical building hash the ruins of the old tower. As we walk toward the eastern bank, we are approaching a spot of immense historical importance. This area was once guarded by a significant medieval defense structure known as Lendal Tower. Lendal Tower, built in the 14th century, served as a fortified gateway and a chain mechanism used to control traffic and defend the city on the river. Imagine a heavy chain being stretched across the Ouse to block enemy vessels. Later, in the 17th century, the tower was ingeniously repurposed as the city's first waterworks, using pumps to provide clean drinking water to residents. So, this spot has moved from defense to industry and finally to modern transportation. Pedestrian the gateway to the center. We are now stepping off the bridge and onto Museum Street. The entire atmosphere changes from the open air of the river to the concentrated density of the city center. The name Museum Street tells you our destination. We are heading directly toward the York Museum Gardens and the Yorkshire Museum. The bridge has served its purpose, delivering us from the modern railway hub into the ancient, historic core of the city. Welcome to Museum Street. We've just crossed Lendal Bridge and are now walking east, right into the historic heart of York, heading toward Duncombe Place, the broad area that opens up near the Minster. The street we are on is quite literally a gateway to the city's past, and its name tells you everything. Museum Street is the main approach to the Yorkshire Museum and the beautiful Museum Gardens, which are just to our left. The creation of the Museum Gardens and the establishment of the museum complex in the early 19th century were huge civic events, transforming this area from a jumble of ancient buildings and defenses into a place of learning and recreation. Look to your left, near the entrance to the gardens. You are stepping onto the site of the vast St. Mary's Abbey. This was one of the wealthiest and most powerful Benedictine monasteries in all of England during the medieval period. Now, all that remains are impressive ruins and stone walls, a result of the dissolution of the monasteries under King Henry VIII in the 1530s. The walls you see are mostly from the Abbey precinct, a powerful visual link to a time when the church held enormous temporal power. As we continue walking, realize that the ground beneath our feet is exceptionally important. This street runs over or near the center of the original Roman fortress of Eboracum. The Museum Gardens actually contain a corner of the Roman fortress walls and one of its corner towers. For centuries, this area was the site of the Principia, the headquarters of the Roman Second Legion. Every step we take here is on a layer cake of history, with Roman foundations just a few feet beneath the surface. Look at the buildings on our right. They are primarily solid Georgian and Victorian structures, built when York was regaining its status as a social and administrative centre. They replaced the older, more haphazard medieval buildings, reflecting a cleaner, more organized era of city planning. The walk here is short, but the sense of anticipation is high. As we approach our destination, the street begins to widen slightly, preparing us for the vastness of the Minster. The buildings start to change, becoming taller and more ceremonial. We are leaving the immediate historical and museum area and entering the liberty of the Minster, the area traditionally governed by the church, rather than the city council. This part of the street was historically known as Blake Street, and it was often a more genteel area, home to professional people, clergy, and wealthy residents. We are now stepping out of the narrow confines of Museum Street and into the wide, spectacular space of Duncombe Place. This area is dominated by two things. First, the incredible, towering presence of York Minster immediately ahead and to the right. Second, the magnificent Victorian architecture that frames the entrance to the Minster, including the former Yorkshire Club and the De Grey Rooms, a grand assembly hall. Duncombe Place itself was created in the mid-19th century by demolishing a number of older buildings to create a more fitting, grand approach to the Minster. It was an exercise in civic pride. We have moved from a Roman fortress wall, past a demolished medieval abbey, and arrived at the foot of one of the greatest Gothic cathedrals in the world. This is truly the monumental core of York. We have arrived at Duncombe Place, one of the most magnificent and open spaces in York. We're standing where Museum Street meets this grand thoroughfare. Our 4-minute walk here is an exercise in appreciating monumental architecture and civic ambition. The very first thing you must do is look directly ahead and to your right. You are standing before the incomparable York Minster. This entire space exists to properly frame this colossal cathedral, one of the greatest Gothic structures in Northern Europe. Duncombe Place itself is a product of the mid-19th century. It didn't exist in its current form in the medieval era. It was created through a deliberate, major effort of Victorian city planning. Older, cramped medieval buildings were cleared away to forge this broad plaza, providing a suitable, grand processional approach to the Minster. This was an act of civic pride, designed to showcase the city's greatest asset. Now, let's look at the buildings framing the street on our left and right. The architecture here is primarily Victorian and Neo-Gothic, designed to complement the Minster rather than compete with it. On our left, you see the grand buildings that were once the Yorkshire Club, an exclusive gentlemen's club, and the elegant De Grey Rooms, built in the 1840s. The De Grey Rooms served as a major assembly hall for social functions, balls, and political gatherings. These buildings speak to York's importance in the Victorian era as the social and administrative capital of the North. As we walk slowly toward the Minster, the scale of the cathedral increases dramatically. Notice the great west towers looming over us. You are now standing on the very ground that was considered the liberty of St. Peter, land traditionally governed by the Archbishop, making it largely independent of the city's mayor and council. This concentration of power, both spiritual and civic, makes Duncombe Place the true ceremonial heart of York. We are standing at the junction of law, faith, and Victorian elegance.